the smell of grass and leather. There were days when we'd play too. We'd cross the lines when the sun would shine and make our dreams come true. I had a glove on my hand and a girl in the stands. She stole my heart like a hit and run. It seems the world was so much simpler back then. We was just out there for fun. I pray for someone to hold your hand, and baseball in the summer, someone to walk with you when this world grows cold. Baseball in the summer, baseball in the summer.
Welcome to the Brockvmac Legendary Rivals podcast, and this has been a long time coming. We have with us in a blue McMaster jersey, Andrew Dawes. Andrew, how are you?
I'm doing fine, Mike.
It's fine. It's good to finally get this one on the road, eh? We've tried a few times, so.
Well, yeah, we were kind of chatting there, but I was about to say, how are you doing? You know, no, it's fun to be on here for sure, right? So
yeah, I think I think that you've got some guys who are eager to catch up with you for sure. You know, I went to a baseball game with Billy Newton and Trevor Lawson and Steve Groh, and you know, you got a good bunch there at Mac. So you know, we're looking forward to kind of catching up with you and getting to know you a little bit. And then we kind of follow a typical format. You know, we'll kind of go back in time and then get caught up right up to our baseball playing days, and then a little bit beyond that. But you know, so why don't we just start with where you grew up and what your family was like and how you developed a love for sports. Why don't we start there?
Oh, wow. Well, grew up in, I guess it's Mississauga, South End. Just sports was always just a part of it, you know. I have two brothers, they're twins, you know, just about a say 18 months younger, right? So not too far apart. So three boys growing up that age. That's how mom kept us busy and out of trouble. She put us in all these sports. So that was just really part of life. And I guess being athletic, I kind of took to all the sports and it kind of built from there. So that's really how I got involved with it. And, you know, because of that, I guess ended up playing just about every sport you can imagine, from swimming, lacrosse, baseball, soccer. It was just a matter of how many hours in a night and how many days in a week. My parents were dedicated to keeping us busy.
I would imagine. Was it was it unique having siblings that were twins? Like, you know, did you find that they had a unique bond, or?
Oh yeah, definitely. They definitely have a different bond. Also, I guess, you know, growing up younger, you know, people are always curious, I guess, so they can always use it to their advantage or disadvantage, if you will. But I always seem to be the trailblazer going to the new school in the new area. My parents, having come to Canada as immigrants, you know, I was sort of the one introduced into the system and having to kind of be the, I don't know, call it the lab rat, the first one blazing the trail, if you will. So,
you know, in Mississauga, an interesting place to grow up. You know, whereabouts did you go to school in Mississauga?
Well, I grew up, say, the north end of Clarkson there. So I started off going to school in that area, in that end of school. That end of the city. So basically, QEW and Winston Churchill type area there. If anyone knows the areas where that indoor skydiving facility is. So they put up a big, large bunch of theaters there. That all used to be like cornfields and apple fields and, you know, orchards and things like that. And I can still tell you days when Winston Churchill was a death trap. You wouldn't even want to drive on there, let alone, ride your bike down that street. You would, you're pretty much asking to die at that point. High school, went to, Lorne Park High School, and then out of Lorne Park High School on to Mac.
So at Lorne Park, it's obvious you're playing all kinds of different things as you're growing up, and probably just a way to keep your parents sane and you and your brothers from roughing it out all the time. Did you play organized sports in high school? Were there a few sports that you settled into at that point?
The main one was actually, believe it or not, swimming, competitive swimming. So I was actually very successful in that. From a young age, we used to do competitive swimming. So, freestyle, breaststroke, backstroke, butterfly, that sort of type of swimming there. And just all through high school. So it's, 6 a.m. in the pool, 5 days a week. It was, it was a battle, but it really taught you discipline, time management, stuff like that. And it really kept you in great shape. So that was always throughout the school year. And then in the summer times, it was into baseball, it's baseball as usual. But I'd always be playing, other organized stuff. Like there was spring league basketball. I played football one year. That's before I put on my, growth spurt. I didn't play very much. So, I didn't come back the second year, which is when they actually wanted me. So I got at the same time. But I did have, a season carry of -1 yard, I think. So
there you go. It's Al Bundy waiting to bring out the old football jersey for the one play. I can relate to this because I'm going to put up my hand here, but you'll see that my left ring finger is crooked as what.
Okay.
I played football and after a half of playing wide receiver where they never threw the ball, right? We were in the ball every time. Went to the coach and said, I'm really feel I'm not contributing the team in a positive way here because you're never going to throw the ball. And he said, well, then let's try you out at linebacker. I'm like, okay, what does that mean? And they said, well, you go as deep as the ball and then you run across. That's a simple instruction. So the very first play I lined up as an outside linebacker, the quarterback fumbled the ball and it was just the most violent thing ever. It was like a big pile of people jumping on top of each other. And I got out of that pile with this finger that was bent sideways. And the middle linebacker was concussed severely because he was asking for his aunt. And I spent 4 hours in the emergency ward with a broken knuckle casing that I never, ever got repaired. And that was football. It was, football is very... very intense and very much like, you're not really ready for how hard they hit you until you get hit the first time. So,
yeah, I definitely had an experience like that in practice. Kind of thought I was getting away with running the play. It was just slated up the middle there. I played slot back there, so I'm getting the ball, handing off, and moving up beside the center. And I see daylight, so I'm going for it. And, the plays run. It's just to basically run across the line, not to finish it out. There's not even room to finish it out. But a friend of mine, he was, 6'3", 6'4", 240, solid. And when I say solid, like there was not an inch of fat on this guy. He just kind of stepped sideways. And next thing I remember is his hand helping me up off the ground. There's a bit of a gap of time in there, But, I don't think he felt me hitting him. And, my mind in its infinite wisdom erased that part from history because it was just too embarrassing.
Well, we've all had that experience with another sport. So you're playing organized baseball in the summer in Mississauga.
Yeah.
Did you start off, what position did you play? And do you have any coaches that were really influential when you were playing?
Oh my gosh. Actually, I guess from a young age, I guess as I mentioned, my parents were navigating, the whole sports system. So, showing some talent early on, I went to a rep tryout, started getting into the rep leagues from, what's that youngest age? Is it Tyke at that time or?
Yeah, squirt or Tyke. It was a different classification than it is now, right? Where it's under a certain age.
Right. I think squirt even came after I started. Okay. I think it was basically went into Tyke and I don't know. Yeah, it was all kinds of, learning the system really. So got into it there. And I think I started off just playing right field half games at a time and sort of developed, being able to hit the ball, steal bases, developed, a pretty strong arm. And then eventually learn to play basically every position on the field. I had one coach, I think that was his motto: you guys are going to learn to play every position on the field. Can't remember his name, but, that was sort of the game plan. And it really kind of helped because you kind of get to understand what your teammates are thinking or seeing the game from their perspective. So it kind of helps you with positioning, understanding, the struggles they might be going through, or, perhaps even how you can help them out or even pick them up, that sort of thing. But it also makes you a pretty versatile player. Right?
Yeah, that's for sure. And did you have a preference to hitting versus pitching? There's it's a different mentality being a pitcher, and I think it's also a different mentality being a hitter. So
I love both.
Okay,
I love both, but how would I say? Yeah, I always loved the battle as a hitter. So that was always fun, and much later, actually graduating and continuing on playing into men's leagues and stuff like that. I used to think, that the hitting's really coming to its own. Like, it almost felt like hitting a home run a game was almost automatic. I don't know if you've ever felt that groove, but those days sort of right after university, and I was kind of doing my grad work at the same time, and I was working, doing the grad school part time, and then just playing, 2-3 different teams and driving around all Southern Ontario. Then after finishing my grad work, was just doing the same thing, but more full time. So it was sort of like working to play baseball, really.
Yeah.
You're playing ball probably 5 days out of 7 a week with, I guess, I can't remember the area, but say on the outskirts of the GTA there. So not quite downtown, but just as you start coming into the suburb, maybe around the Etobicoke area, there were some Spanish leagues we used to play in. The guys that we'd pull out of there, they'd say, all right, if you guys come play a few games in my league and stuff like that. So those guys would always play double headers on the Sunday afternoon, and there'd be a nice big cookout in the parking lot. So how can you say no to that?
Food and baseball sounds like the best idea ever. It's
brilliant.
Yeah, listen, I can't relate to hitting home runs. Hitting is not something I ever wanted to do because A, I'm horrible at it, and B, mostly I just didn't want to see another pitcher while I was standing in a batter's box, given the amount of people that I hit with balls over my career. So why don't we go back to you're in high school and what went into the decision to go to McMaster? Like, did you have other choices, or was there something that drew you to the school?
I don't know. Ironically, it was the first school I visited. So in our final year of school, or maybe it was our second to last year of school, the universities used to have these orientation days, I want to call it. I'm not sure if I'm describing it correctly, but basically they invited potential students to come out, tour the campus, answer some questions of the guide. Maybe they were guidance counselors. I don't really remember now, but basically to have a chance to kind of experience life on campus, ask some questions, get some answers, that sort of thing. So maybe it's the university's first opportunity to try to pitch you on their campus or their facilities. Maybe that experience just went so well, I ended up there. But it was actually ended up being, it was either my first or second choice. I don't recall. But
Tell me a little bit about what you thought of the McMaster. People can have their own opinions of Hamilton, I think, from time to time, but everyone kind of agrees that McMaster has that kind of feel of the kind of university campus you see in movies, right? You kind of walk into a gate and
100%.
Yeah.
I would say that side of Hamilton, where McMaster resides, is sort of in a bubble. It's almost isolated off. And I still distinctly remember that as a student, and then shortly after I graduated my undergrad, I actually worked right downtown. The office was off Hess Street. It was a little engineering firm, but the office was on top of a I want to say advertising agency.
Okay.
And, it was prime spot. We got free parking because I could park in our, key accessed parking spot. So it was perfect right in the heart of the bar district in Hamilton there. But, if you go much further than that, the scene really dropped off pretty quickly.
That's one way of explaining it, I think.
Yeah. Uh, yeah. It was, it really dropped off quickly. So, as you move down, so I was working down there, you kind of go 2 blocks, you're just thinking, wow, where did I end up? It looks like
Yeah.
you're in the middle of a war zone, like Detroit or Chicago or the worst of U.S. cities there.
Yeah,
Uh,
you really don't want to probably have a liquid lunch, which would be a great idea on Hess Street, but then you don't want to wander off too far after that. It's like
yeah.
let's go back to the office. That's so what did you take at Mac? Do you remember what your academically you were taking, and
Oh, yeah.
um were you in residence first year, or did you commute in?
Yeah, I did. Well, the first year, I had an actual choice between a car or residence, and I was being strongly encouraged to live on residence to get the experience, kind of build a network, that sort of thing. So I opted for that, and then decided to do it the second year, which, as everyone says, halfway through the year, it's a regret. The first couple of months in your second year in residence are fine, and then pass it. Actually, honestly, it wasn't that bad. Like I had a decent roommate at the time, and we ended up a few more friends that we all put together into a house for the third year, including my first year roommate. So, things work out. You build those relationships. You settle up your housing arrangements. So yeah, it wasn't too bad there. And what was the other part of the question?
Yeah, what were you taking? Do you remember
Oh, yes.
what curriculum you were signed up for?
Oh gosh, yeah, yeah. Engineering physics. So that was the first time through.
Oh
Uh,
man.
yeah, I guess everyone wants a description of that. So it's kind of like think of the engineering print disciplines from first principles. So kind of boil it down to the basic equations, that sort of thing. So rather, if you're thinking of, say, mechanical, rather than working with, say, the finished equations, how do you derive or arrive at those equations? Or even how would you do the experiments to get the knowledge to arrive at those equations? So that's it from the physics sort of approach. So it kind of takes you into stuff like nuclear physics or optics. Um, like I don't know if a lot of people realize, but there was a nuclear reactor on campus. So part of the curriculum, you kind of go down there. It's a very simple type of reactor. It's called a pool reactor, but you're able to do experiments with it. Not too many people in their lifetime can actually say they've done nuclear experiments. As
No.
rudimentary and fundamental as they are, not too many people could really claim that. So it's quite an experience. Even making a semiconductor wafer, going through those steps and actually making a wafer. And at the end of the whole thing, you kind of go through taking measurements on it, and you get like the little, I think it's 5.5 or 5 or 6 inch wafer. You get to take it home, or well, sorry, you have to bid off between you and your partner who worked on it together, who gets to take it, or you pay them off, or whatever the arrangement is. Buy them a
Well,
lunch or something.
yeah, that sounds like had like a lot of math, obviously, and
Yes.
likely um, pretty trying from an academic standpoint. I could see that would be hard from a lot of study time required and that kind of stuff. Um, what stood out to you about your first couple of years at school?
What stood out? How much work we seem to do compared to the rest of the campus? No, actually, actually, a bit of a joke. It's kind of one of the observations you make. You could always tell who's in engineering or sciences come the change of season time, say springtime or when the fall in the fall. Usually, it's most noticeable in the spring because it would be very cool in the mornings, which all the engineering and science students had classes during those times. In the afternoon is when business, arts, and those students usually had their classes. So typically, what you see in the afternoon, say 1 o'clock, just after lunch, if somebody is walking around with a jacket over their shoulder, tied around their waist, you'd say, "Oh yeah, they were in engineering, or they were doing something pretty hard on campus, right?"
Yeah,
So
it's funny how you have these markers for certain types of curriculum at school. Engineers always struck me as, man, they would be like unshaven, their hair would be all over the place. They'd wear pajamas a lot of the times, right? And Brock didn't have those kinds of programs, but I had lots of friends who went to Queens for engineering, and it just was a completely different world. U of T's engineering too. It's so intense academically that the things like sleep and they kind of suffered from as a result of the workload.
I think the way to sum it up is you end up setting your priorities, right?
Yeah.
And it's those priorities in life and that discipline to manage your priorities is what get you through. And I still remember first year, you could always tell the girl, actually there was one girl in particular, I remember she kind of didn't make it through. She was gone at Christmas time, and she would wake up 5 a.m. and go through her beauty routine. And, people were saying, hey, this is not going to work. But she went as far as she could. It was like a 2-hour beauty regimen. So, that was Daddy's little princess, and she just didn't last very long.
Yeah, to sit beside people in class who, were still smelling of beer from the pub the night before, but who could grind it out. The key to university is going to your classes. So,
Yes.
Amazing in all of that. Tell me how you came across the baseball program, and how did you hear about that?
It was actually Gwendon. I'm not even sure how we first met, but whether we were walking or we just started chatting, I'm not even sure the instant, but it was sort of like, oh, you play baseball? And then, it's a little bit back and forth. And, I'm just building a team. It's a varsity sport. And I said, I didn't even realize it was at this point. And, went through that whole exchange. And the next thing you know, where I'm tossing a ball and getting on a car and driving to, wherever, getting enough guys out initially there. And then, when things really took off, when we started going up against Brock, and, I remember you guys had an army one year. We were like looking at you guys in awe, thinking, how do you even find that many people to play ball? It's like you guys had 26 guys out there or something.
It was a different setup. We had the benefit of launching after, programs like McGill and McMaster and Durham College. So, and Coach McRae, who coaches at Division I NCAA at Rutgers, he came with the intent of we had a junior varsity team. Not a lot of people know that, but we had a secondary team. Yeah. In our first year that I don't think they
that you had two teams there.
Yeah.
And you guys would even practice against each other.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it was something else from that perspective. And it's a different experience than other Canadian teams, their experiences, but no less different, because I think the thing that we'll talk about Jason Gwendon, but you were able to discover on campus tons of great players at McMaster, people that wouldn't. Right. Brock always had a recruiting program in place. So after even in the first year, we recruited players in, and as a result, basically what you have. But at McMaster, when you were first starting out, it was basically Jason Gwendon, social convener, talking to just about everybody on campus.
That's exactly what it was. Yeah, I'm not even sure of the exact moment now. I'm racking my brain to try and recall, but yeah, it was just like an idle conversation. It was just back and forth. Oh, you play baseball? Okay. Then it's like, hey, Mom, Dad, I need my glove.
That's amazing. So why don't we start there? Tell me a little bit about your experiences with Jason Gwendon and Billy Newton, the people that kind of put that first team together. And obviously you're going to have some stories about the trip to Montreal to play in the first national championship and, that infamous exhibition game against Guelph. But why don't we start there? Tell me a little bit about what your thoughts are on Jason Gwendon, because, some of the Brock people know not a lot of people out there are familiar with Jason's story, and we'll get into it. But tell me what you thought of him as a guy that had kind of helmed and started the program.
Well, definitely inspirational. Like the guy had a vision and he was driven. And I'm not even sure how he was able to network and build that network of people to get the word out. It was almost like a grassroots word of mouth sort of organization, try and get the word out that you're building a team. And actually, I think that was part of the conversation. At one point, he had actually said, words to that point, saying, see if you can get a few more guys out, anyone we can get out, at least we'll have a bigger selection pool. We can take the guys we need. And, end of the day, you got to pick from what's available there. Right. So in terms of Jason, he knew baseball. Like, he loved baseball. He definitely had a passion for the game. Everything, from planning strategy, getting behind there, doing pitch count, all the stuff that, a lot of people don't know goes on behind the scenes of baseball, but it's necessary to get that edge. It was great growing up with that, or going through that whole experience and seeing that actually grow. And, you mentioned Bill Newton there, like him as a catcher. I will say I've never thrown as well to a guy in my life. Like, you throw to his mitt, don't miss.
Yeah.
Right? It's his rule. Throw to his mitt, don't miss, don't shake him off, and your life will be good. Miss and he'll be unhappy. You don't want that. So, yeah.
No, I had the experience of being Billy's teammate and, being a kind of a bullheaded left-handed pitcher. I have had that experience of shaking him off and him putting the same sign down. But,
So it's not just me then. All right.
No. It's tons of fun from that perspective. But, he's a guy that believes in what he's doing. And, I think as a pitcher, you always got to find that trust level with your catcher for sure.
Exactly. And honestly, it was a good way. I'd say it was done in a good way. And for me, I think it worked very well. And, even later, I looked for that, that trust with a catcher, to have that rapport, someone that's going to say, all right, I'm going to guide you and get you to focus on this mitt. Because for me, I would say I was a much better hitter than I was a pitcher.
Okay.
So, I was more of an athlete. Yeah, I could deliver the pitch. I could do some of the strategy, but it's better. Just let me deliver the ball. You tell me what it's got to look like or where it's got to be. And that was the better approach for me. So having a catcher actually take that command and control, I don't have to think it's on cruise control. That was always a good day. It's when you get the catchers that were more lazy, stylistic, they're worried more about having a good time back there rather than getting focused and, say, conducting the game. That's how I would say Billy would do it. He really drove the game, even from the plate. Everybody knew the play. We knew what we were doing from before that pitch, before the pitch was even released.
Yeah, for sure. I'm probably a bit of a different personality. Most people know that. A little bit like an unleashed bull. So you need a matador that's going to keep you, charging
Right.
at the right things. And Billy was great at it with me. It was just, he knew that I was generally pissed off. So if he got me more pissed off, that would be great. And,
There you go.
that was a mistake that some catchers that I pitched to later in my career in particular, where they would be thinking, well, this is a left-handed guy who's done some stuff in his career. Let's think our way through this. And they would come up to talk to me. I'd bite their head off and say, go sit there and put your glove in a spot, and,
Yeah.
and, in retrospect, I think the ones that worked well with me always knew that I was kind of wired that way and would lean into it. So, we'll get to. So tell me what it was like being on the first Mac team. You're wearing the blue jersey, which is obvious that the school was not exactly bending over backwards to help you guys. And we've heard a little bit about the, just swing baby T-shirts that you guys had to sell.
Oh my gosh, yeah. Oh wow. Yeah, that was a great shirt. That brings back some memories. And it definitely turned some heads, that's for sure. Was it 30 inches, 30 ounces?
33 inches long, 30 ounces heavy. Just swing, baby. I think
Yeah,
is
swing it, baby, swing, or something like that. Yeah, that was a great T-shirt. I don't know who was it, Bill Newton, and when did that came up with that? I can't remember, but that was the most brilliant thing ever. Like that
so.
slogan sold so many T-shirts on its own.
Yeah, and I'm sure that you guys started to develop a little bit of a image or reputation on campus that didn't hurt. I know that we had it at Brock. We would wear these gray Brock baseball T-shirts, all of us out when we would go to a bar, and there'd be 20 of
Oh,
us at a bar, and we started to kind of get a little bit of a fun reputation on campus as good, as good guys to hang out with and people that like to have a good time. And we didn't do so badly with the ladies as a result of all that. So I'm sure that you guys toting those T-shirts and being what you are, did the McMaster students start to take notice and kind of help you guys along a little bit?
honestly, I don't really remember. Maybe there's some vague recollections of some, I don't know, conversations or that, but honestly, I don't really remember too much.
Well,
Too many.
I'm sure you were busy studying and a few like Rob Pino and some other guys that heavy academically. Their time was spent on a baseball field and then the nose in a book a little bit, very heavily from that perspective. Tell me about Montreal.
Montreal, wow. Let me see some of the details. Oh, that was a wild trip. I remember having a curfew and being disappointed because I had to start the Sunday morning game, but yeah, that was a disastrous start for me. Like, the body just wasn't there, I guess, and just a terrible start. So I was out of there pretty quickly. Maybe I got it in, I threw an inning in a bit,
Okay.
but yeah, nothing big there. So
Well, sometimes it's hard, right? Like people don't realize how late in the year the playoffs occur, and we were also in Montreal when we went, and it was cold, it was snowing, and that's hard for a pitcher to get loose, to get mentally
yeah,
into it when it's freezing cold like that.
yeah.
Um,
I don't recall if it was temperature cool or any. I don't really remember the environment. I remember. Oh, who is the guy? He was a big guy. I remember hitting him, and I think Billy said, "Okay, that's good." But yeah, actually, when I think of it now, I think I think it might have been maybe I'm hoping it was a changeup because it just seemed like it hit him. He just kind of turned into it a little bit and it hit him,
yeah.
and the ball just dropped straight down. Yeah, that's not good. Billy's like, I think he called it and got me out of there, and I was like, yeah, that's probably a good call. He probably would have killed me if I hit him again or something like that. But yeah, I remember he led the league in home runs that year or something like that. So
Yeah, I mean, some good players, and you guys had a pretty good rivalry with Durham College at that time, and
yeah,
kind of
yes,
had it in for Sam Dempster, the coach. What was it like coming back, and then all of a sudden, the league is basically doubled in size because the year that we came in, there was a team at Queens, there was a team at U of T, there was a team at Waterloo, I believe. Like it started to grow heavily, and then of course there's Brock who comes in, changing the nature of changing it. I think from a seriousness standpoint, things got real serious real quick when we entered the
yeah.
league for sure. Tell me about just how your career came along, and you're both pitching and playing, obviously. Um, what did you like most about being on the McMaster baseball team?
I don't know. It's kind of getting out there and playing baseball. I love baseball, right? So any chance to play, getting out there, playing with a good group of guys, and reminding me of the summers that you missed. So anything along those lines, just to be able to get out there and play. But just even the strategy and the planning that went into the games, like that was something I really enjoyed. Doing the everybody had something to do. Whether it was when you're sitting on the bench, you're taking pitch counts, you're watching pitch locations, basically everybody's contributing at every single time. That was one nice thing about how that team was read. or sorry, how it was run. And I think that was the thing that probably gave us, a bit of a competitive edge there and kept us in it. We didn't have a big a selection pool, but it was wits, it was, smarts that kind of really kept us in the game there. Sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say, did you notice a big difference when you went from being coached by Jay Gwendon to then basically a year where you were kind of like self-coached, and then we have Don Graves and Henry Romanowski coming in as coaches? Did you notice a big difference in the way things were organized with the coaches?
It was definitely more driven. Actually, I still remember Hank coming in with the gloves the next day after he had blisters from hitting balls, hitting so many baseballs. But, it was, he had some, pretty serious philosophies there. If you can run until you're exhausted on the field, then you should have, during practice, you should have no problem, executing during the game. So there's definitely a higher level of intensity. But, even after, I think that was the last full time, maybe the following year I was on the roster. I don't really remember the details there. But, I even remember just shortly after I finished my undergrad there and, looking at how baseball really took off, just across Canada in general, it's really blown up. And that's kind of good to see. And knowing you were there right at the beginning of it, it kind of holds a pretty special memory. It's not something you can actually tell too many people to, and they would even believe you, to be honest, right? But, here we are having this conversation, and, it was real. We lived it.
Absolutely. I think it's even harder at a school like Brock didn't have a football team. You guys had a football team, which sucks a lot of oxygen out of the environment there. And McMaster, was starting to really come on as a powerhouse football team at that particular point in time. And so was it hard to get attention on campus, given that, football is a big cultural thing at Mac?
Well, not a lot of people on campus really wanted to come out to baseball. We could throw a party, we could do fundraisers and things like that. But even getting interest, a lot of people were like, oh, there's a baseball team. Everyone knew about football.
Yeah.
But with it even baseball being new at that time, the first thing you had to do is convince people that there was a baseball team. So,
yeah. It's pretty hard when you're sitting there in a jersey and you've got a glove on, there's a baseball team and I play on it, right? Like it's,
right. It seems pretty simple these days, right? And actually, I even remember, saying, wear your shirt around campus. So, people will see the shirt, ask questions, strike up the conversation. Today with social media, it almost seems like an automatic thing, like a no-brainer. But back then, you had to do things, archaic ways. It was like the olden days. If you
we had to put banners up in the hallways of the lecture, where all the lecture halls were, and do a sign-up table and run an ad in the student newspaper, all that kind of stuff. That just really old school, but I guess it's not much different than doing a Canva post or doing a Facebook post. It just was done on a obnoxious neon yellow poster you would staple up in the phys ed complex or whatever. Right. So,
or you had to do it face to face, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Did you find it
different?
Did you find it difficult balancing, some hardcore academics with baseball? Did you find that taxing on your time?
It wasn't too bad. There were times there was a bit of struggle. So, you're doing double duty. I still remember driving up to Montreal with Tino in the back of the, what was it? Oh my gosh, it was a truck or something like that. Yeah, I remember the amount of gas that thing burnt. It was ridiculous. But Pino was in the very back in the bed. He could basically lie down. He was studying for an exam he had coming back. So he was studying the whole time with the light there. And what was it? The truck we drove down in? It was like an 8-cylinder old beat up truck. We had to stop 3 times for gas on the way to Montreal, and maybe another time. I can't remember. I just remember it burned a whole lot of gas.
Yeah,
to fill that tank every time. And when we got down there, we obviously had to split the bill. You can't leave the driver with the whole bill there. He's giving us the ride, so you got to chip in. And these other guys, they came down in a Honda Civic and they said, "Yeah, we haven't stopped for gas yet." Yeah, I think they said they drove from McMaster to Montreal, drove around for a little bit, and on the way back, they finally stopped for gas, where we had to stop like twice or something like that on the way down alone. So
yeah, the days of the old, the big vans that would carry people. Andrew, what would you think would be your personal highlight from your career at Mac? What did you have an at bat or a certain team that you really got up playing, or an experience that stands out for you?
That's a good question. See, there's a couple. Where was it? We must have been playing. I'm not sure if it was Oshawa or. Oh, sorry. I'm just trying to remember the scene now, but I hit a ball. Actually, this is kind of funny because I actually was able to turn on one, hit it down the line. So it was almost right down the line. And it was 319 feet and 11 inches. Yeah, at 11 inches because it hit the exact top of the wall and then just bounced out. If I remember correctly. So it was almost an inch short.
So you hit one out in Oshawa? Good for you, man.
I remember the park because it had the
ivy.
Yeah, it had the stone wall back there.
Yeah. It's definitely Oshawa. I played there, so I know I know that park real well. And not a lot of home runs get hit there, so that was a good poke. It's
well, it was almost an inch short, right? I remember. I think it was Shade Tui. He kind of chirped me on it. He says, "Yeah, almost that far, buddy."
Well, that's. I'd be shocked if Tui hit one. So that
he can't chirp you on hitting for distance here. So though.
Let's touch on another subject. You got to play a little bit, maybe 1 year or 2 years with Brad Reason. He's a big motivator behind this whole weekend. And tell me a little bit about what Brad was like as a teammate.
Wow. Okay. Where was he? Shortstop? Second?
I think he played second base and short, depending on how his arm was feeling. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. It's sort of coming back now. Well, I got to dust off the cobwebs. No, he was a solid guy, if I remember correctly. Good teammates. But honestly, back then, everyone was just, it was a good group of guys, to be honest.
Yeah.
That's probably the one thing I miss most about the organized sports. And, even playing later on, there were teams I go play with and the chemistry wasn't quite right. It was still a good group of guys, but, everyone was too bland. Everyone was too worried about stepping on people's toes. Back then we had the right mix, the right group of guys. Everyone knew what they were doing, and everyone sort of had their place, I think. If anyone felt left out, I didn't really see it, didn't really feel it. It just felt like a team. I don't know if there's any other way to put it.
It's a great way of putting it, my friend. And we all have special memories of those kinds of environments and teams that we play on. So why don't we get into, you obviously graduate and go into a post-grad educational stream. Where did that lead to? And obviously your first job was working downtown Hamilton at an engineering firm. Tell me a bit about the early start of your career and graduating from Mac.
All right. Well, I got into grad school. I was doing computer engineering there. I was mostly focusing on AI stuff way back then. So, back then they were kind of, I say, sort of trying to decide which way to point the compass. So there are a lot of new technologies coming out, different approaches to AI. And right now, everyone sees it in the news. That's the one that basically won out overall for now. But, it doesn't solve all the problems. But not to delve on that. the line of research I was doing, it didn't solve, real world problems, so to speak. So I didn't really pursue that. But basically, as I was working, that really captured my attention. We started building, how would I call it, educational equipment.
Okay.
So how do you call it? Educational equipment to teach control systems at different universities. And when I first joined it, it was this first job, small company. And, there's only a handful when we started, and kind of I stayed with that company for maybe just short of 10 years. And when I was first there, maybe it was, I want to say under 10 people full time. Maybe it was 5 or 6, somewhere in that scale. And by the time I left, it was over 30, maybe even approaching 50, somewhere in that area. So, it
Okay.
was a rapid growth. We'd gone through 2 different moves, and it was, we worked with a really intelligent group of people. So everyone there was very highly skilled, highly motivated, highly educated as well. I think everyone there had a PhD or a master's, especially in the at the start of the company there. Up until we had about 30 people working for us. So,
Okay.
learning the ins and outs, going with a company like that, I think that really laid the foundation and gave me a real foundation to have practice a lot of the things I learned in school. Like I was doing a lot more, say, electronics or software programming, all of those little things of engineering that, you kind of did as support. I really didn't get into semiconductor manufacturing or or the optics, but there was always a project that would touch on or would require a part of that skill just because of the nature of the work we were doing. Building experiments that you're selling to universities to teach something, it does require a bit of, say, skill or effort or knowledge to be able to put those things together. So you're pulling on a whole lot of pieces of your education, if you will. So luckily, I actually got to apply. A lot of people, they go through school and say, oh, I'll never use that in real life. Right. But here I am actually using it and, actually being, I guess, humble enough to say, geez, I can't believe I actually use that. Here's that prof saying it. I'm thinking, there's no way I'll ever use this. Why am I spending enough attention? And then you're working on this one little problem and you kind of say, a light goes off in the back of your mind and you kind of say, wow, let me go look that up. This is sort of before, the internet really took off. Maybe you could do a search and things like that. Google wasn't as great as it is now, but you could always say, go back. It would, you kind of get a start, maybe look at an old textbook or some notes if you still had them. And you kind of looked in the right direction and had to do a little more research, but you're like, wow, okay, maybe I do know something of this. And you could actually apply it. It would actually be useful what you actually spent your hard-earned money to earn an education for,
That's
So
amazing.
the pieces, I'll say the pieces really connected for me
Okay.
throughout my life and throughout my career. And it's very often put me into opportunities that I otherwise wouldn't have been able to experience or even conceive, to be honest.
That's, it's great. And I think people that have kids or that are, of that age where they're just entering the university experience need to understand that it's beneficial, that there's a lot of positives that come from getting educated and from spending some time working in a field. And especially if your passions lead you there,
Yes.
it pays off later in life. I'm going to ask you a good, an interesting question. You haven't seen some of your teammates in a long time. What would they be surprised to know about you in the 20-something odd years or 30 odd years since you've seen them last?
I have no idea. I've done so many different things. Like, I guess maybe people knowing me back then, although maybe it's popped up, but I've been on different TV shows or I've popped up in different ad campaigns and I've been in Super Bowl commercials 2 different years, right?
Okay.
So, maybe, maybe
Tell
some of
me what Super Bowl commercials were you in?
let me see. It would have been, I want to say 2015, 2016 were the 2 years.
Okay.
And 2015 would have been right after that, there would have been like a half-hour special. There was a special program done on that. It just kind of came out of the work experience and right place at the right time. So very lucky. It was kind of one of those once in a lifetime opportunities that you kind of get experienced.
So you were an influencer before there were influencers, actually, Andrew, if you think about it. And that's a big it's a big platform to be on, right? Like it's it's not a small audience by any stretch of the imagination.
Yeah, they did. The company invested a lot of money into the project, and they were wise enough, to maximize the return on investment there. So they took some camera footage or, video footage as the thing progressed, and they ended up slicing it together a Super Bowl commercial. And to this day, they're involved in various sporting sponsorships. So it worked out quite well for them.
It's pretty amazing. It's kind of what my business is. I help businesses get into sports sponsorship and integration in a brand, and it's exciting to hear that you're involved in that. Is there you did mention earlier that you kept playing baseball for a time.
Yes.
How long did that go? And, has that transitioned? Are you still playing today, or have it transitioned into some other interests that you pursue?
Probably into other interests. So I'll start with that. It's been a while since I've thrown, so the shoulders feeling pretty great. No more aches and pains in that part of my body. But the rest of the thing, generally, I'm pretty well healthy. But I did play up until I was, wow. I want to say maybe about 10 years ago was the last time I played.
Okay.
Regularly, maybe a year or two after that. So I'd say it's on over about 9 years. And then maybe just prior to COVID there, so about 5 years ago, maybe 6, I don't know, too much longer than that, I kind of went back. There was a tournament we used to play Labor Day weekend. A bunch of the guys I'd end up playing for one team. It was funny. A bunch of guys from GTA, we'd get together and people put together teams and we'd all be driving out to Kingston to play each other again. So, it was that bad at one year. They had to reorganize it, but it used to be a really big tournament. And I guess as you get older, they kind of kept it going for the same group of guys, it seems. And I think I would say that was the last time I played. So maybe 5-6 years ago.
Yeah.
When I first stopped, it was pretty much cold turkey. I said, you know what? Okay, time to move on. And it was like ripping off a Band-Aid. I have to say I was itchy, nervous, but I did fill it with golf. So that was maybe the best way to do it. I kind of put in one addiction for another. I don't know if that's healthy, but it worked. So,
do you have a favorite course that you've played?
Favorite course on the spot here. Actually, one. Oh my gosh, what is it called?
I'm a big fan of Windance in Uxbridge. It's an old rock quarry that they converted.
Oh, okay.
And I like playing there for sure. But it's probably because it's got lots of. It's relatively forgiving if you spray your driver. So, I've had the experience a couple times in my career. I played the Canadian Open at Glen Abbey the day after the Canadian Open had happened, and it was unbelievable. Like, if you bounce 2 feet off of the fairway, the rough, you can't find your ball. And you break your wrist trying to get it out. And so it's always amazing to me how amazing a professional golf player would be, because I'm nowhere near that. But
I've traveled, and one of the bucket lists, particularly say in California, one of the friends or one of my work colleagues that used to cover that region out there, we would make it a point to say if we had a week of meetings, I would fly in the Friday night and we'd play golf all over the weekend. So we'd kind of pick some of the nicer courses out there. Never did get to Pebble Beach or that. But for example, played Half Moon Bay. That would be out in that same region, and it's right on the water. So it's very similar to, say, Spyglass Hill. And, when you play some of those courses compared to some of the ones you have around, say, Northern Ontario, or say even PGA courses that I played in, say, Las Vegas, you really see a different style of golf course many a time.
Yeah.
There's, I'd say, big difference I see here. They're a lot more tree lined. The
Yeah.
space would seem a little more constrained. Whereas when you get to some of these big, PGA rated type courses, these are very large open expanses, some of these shots. And, when you're playing, sorry, I'm not playing from the tips, but when you're standing at the tips back there, it's a very different looking course. So you really gain a lot of respect from that, seeing that.
Yeah. I think I would, at some point in my life, would love to travel overseas and play a link style course in England or
I've had
Scotland.
friends, yeah, I've had friends do that, and they say, yeah, you basically get your name into a lottery, and hopefully they call you, because otherwise you have to book months in advance. You have to stay there, but you can
Yeah.
go there the day of, and if they call you put your name into a lottery, they call you, then you get to go. If not, you come back the next day. If you come back often enough, sometimes they may feel bad for you and bump you to the top of them. That's what I'm told anyway, is, how it works.
Yeah. Is there a,
It really is good to travel and play different courses, and, just a different style of grass.
yeah, for
It's
sure.
amazing what kind of difference that makes.
So it sounds like you've traveled a fair amount with your job, and is there a favorite place that you've been? Like, I frequently will talk about that I developed a love for the city of Chicago due to traveling,
Okay.
and really come to appreciate the construct of the city and the character of it, and that was entirely due to professional travel, business travel. Traveled a lot to New York and Vancouver and Calgary, Montreal as well. But to me, Chicago was always my favorite, comparative to even to New York.
Okay.
Do you have a spot that you really liked that you've traveled to?
Yeah, there've been so many. Like, I think each spot kind of has a unique thing that kind of struck me as interesting. But one of the nicest places I think I've gone to is, say, La Jolla, California. There, yeah, I don't know. It's just like a beautiful area, kind of that part of California. You have the mountain on one side, you have the lush greenery. Um, I think I happened to be there because I was attending a university function. It was, with a work sort of trip, but I kind of took it upon myself early, if I'm ever in an area, to take advantage of that time and tour around the city.
Okay.
You know, Even if it meant, taking a vacation day or two vacations day, the flight's already paid for. So might as well go explore, check out some of the locals, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
Or, if you have downtime in between meetings and stuff like that, you can go for a drive in the rental car, explore the city, take advantage of it. It was one thing, I guess I kind of hated it growing up as a kid. My parents we'd be going off on tournaments, whether it be a hockey tournament in the winter or baseball tournament in the summer, or soccer, whatever the case may be. All my friends, they would kind of go out, or the rest of the team, they'd be going off to the mall, playing, going wild. My parents, they'd want to go, so, see a museum or something like that, or go off to another little local attraction and get me to experience that. And looking back, that was something that was actually pretty smart to do, I guess, because it kind of stuck with me. So, traveling through all these times, I go to California or I go to, say, Arizona, you get to see some pretty remarkable things by not staying in your hotel room and
Yeah.
getting out and exploring. So
It's
yeah,
amazing. It is amazing what we maintain or what we develop an appreciation for later in life, right? Like our parents,
yeah,
we always think of as kind of square and kind of telling us, how to live life a little bit. And then it's amazing some of the subtle influences they have on us. It's kind of funny. I'm going to move into a different subject matter because it's
okay,
unique to you. You talked about earlier being involved as an engineer that was tied to AI. And, artificial intelligence is right now, right in the front windshield. It's right here because we're dealing with, methodology behind artificial intelligence based advertising and AI tied to customer service or health even. tell me a little bit about, as someone who's involved in facets of that industry, are there things that we need to be a little bit worried about in terms of the overuse of AI or the over reliance on it?
Um, I'm by no means an expert, but my 2 cents on it is, like anything, we kind of go through different cycles in adoption, if you will. And if you kind of think back, maybe, even 20 years ago now, or a little more than 20 years, to the whole .com explosion, if you will, and then subsequent bubble. If you think, if I don't know if you can remember that, back some of the headlines and things like that, but a simple website name was, you register a .com and your company name, and suddenly your valuation went to millions or tens of millions of dollars overnight. And
Yeah.
you kind of look at that, and in hindsight, looking, we have to kind of say, well, who couldn't have seen that coming, right? But out of that initial dust, or that wild wild west frenzy, a few companies survived and some new ones emerged, and we were able to make better use of it. So I kind of think we're somewhat in the midst of that now. If you look back in time, there are different patterns. We had like the mortgage crisis. All of a sudden everyone was going out and buying houses, and they're coming up with all these financial products, and then that blows up, and it almost destroys everything. But we build and recover, we continue on. So here we are, the next cycle, or maybe I'm skipping a few in between, but we're here at the AI cycle, and things are building up. And I think out of the dust, as long as we don't kill ourselves, but really, I don't think we're going to be reckless or foolish. I think some people will get hurt. People will get fooled or scammed. But in the big, the big picture, thinking of things, I don't think everything's going to fall apart. I don't think there's a
I think we're in a unique position also being in Canada, because we're kind of like the fly on the outside of the jar.
okay.
And because we can see into how these things work their way out in the world's largest petri dish in the United States, I think we benefit from being observers into that marketplace.
Yeah.
We get affected when the elephant rolls over. Don't get me wrong on that. But I think in terms of AI, it's a much more aggressive society in terms of adoption, and Canadians have always tended to be a little more conservative about everything. And so I think there is some benefit to us being able to observe how this goes down in the US. And we're seeing both the benefit and the hazard that's involved with AI when we see its influence in politics, its influence in PR, these kinds of things. And the interesting part is, I read a release today that was all about, they have an AI version now that's able to think with some form of supposed empathy.
Okay.
So, that's going to be unique. And I work in advertising and marketing. So for me, I can pick out current AI, which is early generation
Right.
stuff.
Yeah.
I can pick it out a mile away, because there's certain things that that authenticity is an issue with it. But I feel that it's also a great area of opportunity, and there'll be lots of our kids and lots of future generations that are employed in these industries that deal with this. And I don't think we should be running from technology. We should always embrace it. So
I
that's
totally agree with that. Like, I don't think we need to fear it. Let's be smart about it. Like, we can't be, instantly connecting it up to weapons or something like that. With that stuff. I'm hoping somebody's not quite that foolish, or those cases would be rare. I don't expect the militaries to start doing things like that, but gradually, as we get more experience with it, it will creep its way into even, what we would consider today as dangerous systems. But I think we'll put safeguards, just as we've gotten this far with, building other technology or integrating those into our lives.
Yeah, digital was seen as a big risk, and
Yeah.
there's still, anything. It's a good modicum in life is anything in moderation should be good for you. It's when you tip over, and you have, in my case, I've raised kids in the digital age, so keeping them metered in terms of their exposure to screen time and these kinds of
Oh yeah.
things are all
Yep.
super important, from that perspective. Andrew, are you a Jays fan?
I am, but be honest, lifestyle and time constraints lately just don't allow me to follow it as much as I used to.
Okay.
I'm terrible for following sports. I'm the guy that will read the headlines the next day, get the summary and say, okay, it looks good. And, I'm pretty content with that. But at the same time, as it comes down to playoff, I'll start paying a little bit more attention. So,
well, we won't have to worry. We won't have to worry about the Blue Jays going to the playoffs this year. That's for sure.
Well, so I know, right? That's the way it goes. But yeah, when I was younger, I used to be pretty avid fan. I still remember days at Exhibition Stadium. Those were some of the great days of baseball. I'll never forget those. And actually, even more recently, I remember being downtown Toronto, and when I came up from the subway, I didn't really recognize which way I was facing. So I asked somebody, which way is, what did I say? Which way's the Sky Dome? And they kind of looked at me and said, Jimmy, Raptor Center. And at that point, I kind of scratched my head.
It's
Okay.
It's unbelievable. I remember when it was built and was open, and like you, I went to Exhibition Stadium and used to sit in the grandstands and
Yes.
steel benches. Boy, oh boy.
Yes.
And
you're saying the grandstand.
Yeah. Like the bleachers in the outfield out there, and then there would.
I had the bleachers, so we actually had the actual chairs there. But yeah, I remember further out there was the actual benches.
Yeah, we would always come in for opening day. Me and we would skip school.
Okay.
And we would come in and sit in the bleachers there, and there would be fights and there would be craziness and all that stuff that goes with, the bleacher section. But it was always a fun experience. And you're right, we all knew it as Sky Dome because that's what it was when it opened. And
yes,
now, I mean, obviously, I've been this year to a few games, and they've done a great job with the park, but it's so different.
I haven't been down since they did the reno. So,
did you play on the McMaster team that got to play U of T in the dome?
Yes, actually, that was one of my other memories. There was I missed it by that much. It was caught at the warning track.
That'd be great to hit one out, eh? So it's.
I'm telling you, it was caught. If I remember correctly, it was caught at the warning track, right at the track.
Yeah, that's
just giving that a little boost.
Did the old Jose Canseco? It hits him in the head and goes over the fence, right?
I could just leave that part out of the story.
That's amazing. So listen, later this week we'll obviously all be getting together and celebrating 30 years of this and 30 years of life. After all that, is there, and I think it's great because we'll all come together, regardless of whether we were Brock Badgers or McMaster Marauders. And Andrew, we're all really looking forward to seeing you. Is if you gave one piece of, what's one thing that you carried from your McMaster experience that still influences you today? You feel that it's something that, other than your education, which obviously has paid off in your job and your career, but one thing that you learned in your time at McMaster on that ball field that you still feel applies today?
Okay. Well, I would say, prepare. Get prepared. Like I was mentioning, doing the stats, just charting guys on the bench and having that info to prepare for the next time you saw them. As you go through life, a lot of people kind of, how would I say, they fail to plan. Or even worse, they fail to learn from experience. And I think that's one of the things that, the baseball in particular really taught me is if you take that opportunity to learn from experience, whether you write it down or you're even just paying attention, looking for those patterns, those subtle clues, those hints, they're everywhere throughout life. Those little advanced warnings. I would say, looking back, how many times have you thought back and, you're reminiscing about a situation, you say, darn, if I just seen that, or how could I not have noticed that, or, those negative doubts. They always say, hindsight is not good for you and things like that. But I would say you can always learn from a bad experience and say, listen, maybe I should take a little more time, pay a little bit more attention, look for those cues. And, it's what it takes to be successful in baseball. And I think it's what it takes to be successful in life.
That is a wonderful way to end this podcast conversation.
All right. All right. We'll print it then.
Amazing. Andrew, thank you so much for tonight. And we'll see you at the Brockvmac Legendary Rivals weekend.
Okay, great. Thank you.